Revenge films.
My name is Jessica. I live together with my husband named Oscar. Oscar was a normal office employee working full-time at a company, and he had a really kind and easygoing personality. I had always loved to cook ever since I was younger, and even after we got married, I was putting a lot of effort into making dinner every single day for my husband, who was working hard so that he could come home to home-cooked meals after a long day at work. I got along really well with my husband's family, and there were a lot of opportunities for the entire family to get together, including both of my in-laws, my brother-in-law and his wife, and my sister-in-law and her husband. I really got along with everybody as if they were my own family, all except one person, and that was my sister-in-law Karen, who I did not get along with. Karen was always bullying myself or her other sister-in-law Michelle, and she would always go against everything that we said. So even if we were having a conversation, most of the time I was left feeling frustrated. For whatever reason, Karen had way too much of a competitiveness, and for some reason thought of Michelle and I as her rivals. She would tell any kind of lie if it meant getting the upper hand on either of us. One day, when I was talking about the fact that I used to play the piano, she would say things like, "I never learned how to play the piano, but I can play it better than you." And when my mother-in-law complimented me that I was good at cooking, she would cut in and say, "Even I can make something that easy." It was an everyday occurrence that she would tell really obvious lies like this. My husband knew all about this as well, and the one saving grace for me was that he would always empathize with my complaints about Karen. Then one day, it was announced that we were going to be having my father-in-law's big 60th birthday party at the family house, and it was going to be a potluck style for everybody to bring one plate of food. I decided to bring the pork belly stew that my father-in-law loves, so I woke up early that morning and put my all into making that dish. After I finished seasoning the pork, I stewed it in the pressure cooker for about 30 minutes, and the delicious pork belly stew was finished. "It's done. Oscar, have a taste."
Let's see. It's delicious! You're the best! I'm sure my dad will be so happy about this.
When we brought the homemade cooking over to Oscar's parents' house, his little brother and his wife Michelle had already arrived. Michelle and my mother-in-law were preparing the other dishes, and so my husband and I went out to go buy the drinks and the other little snacks for the party. We purchased a massive amount of alcohol and juice. We headed back home, and by the time we arrived, everything was already prepared for the party. I decided to go and get my specialty pork belly and lay it out for everybody, but when I went into the kitchen to prepare it, the pork belly stew that I left on the countertop was missing. I panicked and looked everywhere, but then I discovered the empty pot underneath the cabinet. I was flustered, and I went out into the living room, and I saw that the pork belly stew that I had made was already sitting, laid out on top of the table. And then, to my disbelief, my sister-in-law Karen was bragging that she made it herself and boasting about it. When I saw that, I immediately asked to speak with my mother-in-law, and I explained the situation to her. "Ma'am, I'm the one that made the pork belly stew, and yet do you hear what Karen is saying out there?"
I knew it, because there's no way that girl would ever be able to make something like a pork belly stew that takes a lot of preparation time.
"But what should I do about it?"
Seriously, she's so unnecessarily competitive. It's such troublesome behavior. You can just go ahead and give it to her straight.
Because I was given the go-ahead from my mother-in-law, I went into battle mode as I headed into the living room and took my seat. "Hey Karen, do you have a pressure cooker at home?" I didn't want to give her any time to think about it and come up with an excuse, so as soon as I entered the living room, I immediately asked her, and Karen had a shocked look on her face as she answered. "I don't have a pressure cooker, so what?" "Oh really? Well then, how did you make pork belly stew without a pressure cooker?" "What? I stewed it?" Karen answered without any confidence in her voice, and so I continued to question her as I cornered her. "So, how long did you stew it for?" I don't know. About an hour." That was when my other sister-in-law joined the battle. "What? You only stewed it for an hour? How did you get it to be this soft in just 1 hour?" "Oh, shut up! This is none of your business anyway." For some reason, Karen lost her temper, and so she stood up and tried to go somewhere. But I wasn't going to let her get away with it. And when Karen tried to run away, I grabbed her by the arm. You know, this pork belly stew, you have to use the pressure cooker to cook it in boiling water for 30 minutes, and then stew it for another 30 minutes after you add all of the flavors. So really, how did you do it? I started questioning her and making my anger more obvious, and this time Karen looked to her mother with tears in her eyes as if she was begging her for help.
Oh, Mom!
Really? How is it that you made this? I would also love to know.
Oh, come on! Why aren't you taking my side?
If you want people to compliment you, then why don't you try working hard for yourself once?
Everybody that was there was looking at my sister-in-law with cold eyes. She looked around the room and realized nobody believed her anymore. She just said one word.
I just wanted everybody to compliment me a little bit, that's all.
When I heard that word, I regained my composure and felt a lot better immediately. And then the entire family enjoyed my father-in-law's grand 60th birthday. I thought that my sister-in-law felt guilty about what she did, and so I left Oscar's family home feeling really refreshed. But that feeling didn't last long. Soon after that, an incident would occur that would stomp all over that happiness. When we got home, I was relaxing and nonchalantly looking through my social media when I saw that my sister-in-law was posting about my father-in-law's birthday celebration on her social media. And there, she wrote as a caption,
"All of these dishes were handmade by me."
Not only that, but the recipe that I had mentioned to her, she had posted pretty much word for word. And she also written something like,
"I hope you all try it."
as if to take all of the credit for that dish. At that time, I thought that she apologized and the case was closed, but I couldn't believe that a similar thing was happening again. I felt like I was being betrayed once again, and I couldn't help but to feel a strong sense of anger. I tried my best to hold that anger, and I immediately showed my husband her post. Look at this! She doesn't feel guilty at all. Look at what she's doing instead.
Whoa, you're right. My goodness. She really has no shame.
I want her to cut it out. That's enough already. Even though your mom and I got angry with her, and she seemed to apologize.
Leave it to me.
When he said that, Oscar then picked up his phone and commented on Karen's social media post.
If you don't cut it out already, I'm going to report you for being an imposter.
My husband and I watched the screen to see how his sister was going to react, but then immediately after, the post disappeared. Oscar then picked up the phone and called Karen's husband and explained the situation to him. After that, Karen was left being lectured from both sides by her husband and her brother.
So what was that apology that you gave the other day?
What are you talking about?
Don't play dumb with me. I'm talking about your social media.
I already erased it, so what's the problem?
Karen started to lose her temper, but that was when I heard her husband's voice on the other end of the phone.
If you don't fix that personality of yours, we're going to get a divorce!
He yelled. I'm sure Karen must have panicked when she heard the word divorce, and she hung up the phone. But then, not long after that, I got a phone call from her, and she was desperately apologizing. But I told Karen that, even though she had just apologized to me before she repeated the exact same thing, and that I couldn't trust her anymore, but then Karen was crying and apologizing to me over and over again. And then, Karen admitted that every single day she was purchasing ready-made food at the store, and lying to her husband that she was cooking all of those dishes herself. When I heard that, on one hand, I was so over it, but on the other hand, I was also a little bit happy that my sister-in-law, who had such a big ego all this time, was finally telling me the truth. If you're going to lie about it, then why don't you learn how to cook?
Because I've never been good at using a knife, and I don't know what to do in the kitchen.
But anybody can get better if you practice.
Do you really think so? I really don't want to get a divorce no matter what, so please, will you teach me how to cook, Jessica?
I never could have imagined in my wildest dreams that the day would come that my sister-in-law would make such a request to me. But Karen was so desperate that it made me realize just how terrified she was of getting a divorce. I felt some sympathy for her, and so I decided to teach her how to cook. At Oscar's family house, my mother-in-law and I started teaching her how to cook together. It was a slow process, though little by little she was getting better at using a knife.
It's done. Meat and potatoes still.
Amazing! Amazing! Your mom and I barely helped with any of this, so that means that this is cooking that you made with your own 2 hands, Karen. Well done!
That's not true, because my mom helped me with peeling the vegetables in the beginning.
But everybody has to start somewhere.
You know, you've always had such a big ego ever since you were a little girl. No matter how many times I tried to teach you how to cook, you refused to listen whatsoever. And that's why you ended up like this.
Because...
From now on, Jessica and I are going to teach you how to cook, so you better listen and properly take notes. Do you understand?
Yes, ma'am.
Perhaps my sister-in-law's actual personality itself may not have changed much, but I had to admit that seeing her apologize for her past behavior and actually trying really hard to learn the dishes that we were teaching her and practice them did make me feel a lot better. And ever since that day, my sister-in-law became really easy to spend time with, to the point where I actually enjoyed spending time with her, and we were able to get along way better than we used to. Her cooking skills also improved, and she said that her husband also never mentioned divorce again, especially after seeing how hard she was working to actually cook him homemade meals every day. If she had remained the way that she was before, I couldn't help but to think it was only a matter of time before her husband divorced her. And that made me think that pointing out Karen's lie that day and facing her head on in that battle was the right thing to do. From now on, I hope she doesn't tell strange lies like that, and I hope that she treasures her husband that didn't leave her for having a big ego.
How was today's video? If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, like, and leave a comment. Stay tuned for more.